All right, guys, welcome back to the Monthly Cup. We have another game for you, and it's going to be two new school players. We have Shadow Blue going up against Kumpel Keffer in the first semi-finals. Now, I don't know about you, Lizard, but I have no idea who these players are. Do you have any insight for me?
Me neither. I've played against Kumpel Kefir a bit of a ladder, and Shadow Blue, I have no idea who he is. He's a Chinese player, but it's good that we have some variety in the monthly cup now. It used to be all French players and German players or Austrian players really dominating here, but now that we have the addition of some Japanese players, some Chinese players, and of course the Koreans who are also in the monthly cup, we have some nice variety here.
It's wonderful to see the expansion of Faeria throughout the worldwide scene. Like you said, Europe was a very dominant force in competitive
Yeah.
Faeria, especially during the early access period, with the Canadians definitely putting a strong show in on some of the American players. But now, Asia is in the picture, and we have to come to appreciate and witness the growth of those scenes and their players coming out on top in these monthly cups. So we could potentially have our first representative from Asia winning a cup in this tournament. Now, you said you played Kumpel on the ladder. Do you have any idea of what you played against? Do you get an idea of what type of player he is?
Mm, Not as far as deck choices go. I think I played against him using just a standard Crackthorn. But he seems to be a really solid player, and as you can see, he's doing pretty well, going 3-2 against Imperia and 3-0 against Iwi. I think he's hungry for the cup, but so Shadow Blue and probably Dawn Park. So it's gonna be a tight right side on the bracket, and the left side is packed as always. I mean, they were only good. There were a lot of good players to begin with, and now Arianel against King Dance. I mean, one good player is going to come out. Let's see who gets it.
Yeah, it can. This cup can go any direction now. We could have a returning champion or a completely new champion, but we'll find out a little later on. First up, we have a semi-final from the right hand of the bracket: Shadow Blue versus Kumpel, and we have Scorch and Atmaz to guide you through the play-by-play. Take it away, guys.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to get into the game here, and just as Aquablad said, joining earlier than he normally does. Atma is joining me for the cast. How are you doing?
I'm here for the semifinals with you, Scorch. I'm happy about it. Thanks for having me. We get the wild card match. Who are these people? Where did they come from? Shadow Blue, yeah, like Lizard was saying. Chinese player. I'm told by the Chinese community. He worked really hard at getting into the monthly cup. Like, that was his goal, to get into the monthly cup through ranking. And, well, guess what? He did it. We've never seen him before in a tournament. So, excited to see what he brings. And then on the other side, we've got Kumpel Keffer, who's a German player and, a similar story. So we're going to see, looks like Mono Red, maybe Crackthorn for Shadow Blue. And Kumpel Keffer is going to open with, looks like Blue Jump so far, with the Spell Whirl.
We'll see if the Spell Whirl gives anything good. Does get the Ninja Toad, which should be something that comes out really nicely throughout the course of the game. Maybe that Triton Chef can give the Banquet in the right spot to one of his creatures and get a good buff here. But starting with the Cypher coming out from Shadow Blue, Kumpel Keffer will really be looking for a Frogify to turn the course of the early game here.
And with that underground boss, it reveals that Shadow Blue's deck is probably a combat-oriented red deck, possibly even red-yellow. Remains to be seen. Kumpel's going to get this harvest going on. Do you think he's going to... Looks like he's highlighting to the right there. Yeah, he wants to start double collecting on the sides here with this jump deck.
Yeah, switching off to the other side does make sense here. You definitely want to play away from your opponent there, play away from any type of Horsemaster shenanigans possibly coming out from Shadow Blue, and just getting that Cypher to snowball incredibly early. Also, with the jump, you probably have that extra mobility away from your opponent, so you want to wait until you can get that Frogify, really get the value from the cards here. So Kumpel Keffer just going for that reset onto the opposite side, play away from Shadow Blue's creatures. I would expect that we see the boss follow up here as well. just because you have that Horsemaster again, so you're able to respond to a lot of things that the blue player is going to do once they start moving towards the well on either side.
Right, and that's exactly what Shadow Blue wants to do. He wants to harvest from the well. Not only harvest from the enemy well, but gain purchase there, create a lake there so he can summon Mystic Beasts, which I would imagine are also in this deck. But yeah, he wants to reduce that Colossus down to a nice and cheap value Verduin Forest that he can play right next to the opponent's space. So going forward with the Water Elemental this turn is a lot harder with the Underground Boss there, but he can still, just go just like that. So he's free from the Underground Boss, or I think so, but like you said, still in Horsemaster, perfect answer.
Yeah, it looks really good here. Of course, it's going to be able to collect and gather more Faeria as well, so could see even like the Axe Grinder if Shadow Blue wants to get another creature down. Probably won't expect to see that this turn. We'll just see maybe Cypher push up on the left, and then the Prairie Developed and the Horsemaster come down to move that boss over to the right, and Shadow Blue really start to take a bit of control over the board here.
And with this play right here, he locks out 2 positions next to his orb for the blue player to no longer have. There is still that 1 space next to the enemy orb in double harvesting position for Mystic Beast. Now there's the Frogify. That's what you want to say for Cypher. In theory, maybe he's able to get rid of that Cypher without using Frogify, but at this point it doesn't look very likely. He does have that Triton Chef, which will give him a delicious banquet that might be able to help, but no. Trainer goes right on the board, and here's the Ninja Toad.
Yeah, really nice Ninja Toad here. Whether he wants to set up even another Ninja Toad to clear and really take a lot of positioning over on the right side, or whether he goes for Colossus or just slow play for this turn again and play nothing to save more Faeria for next turn. There's a lot of options for Kumpelkeffer right now, and looks like he is going to go for the Ninja Toad there.
I'm really impressed with how fast these players are playing. If you do this on the ladder, you can't play this fast unless you're very, very good, because each of these turns is very important. Now, that Triton Chef is a wild card in this match, not to use that term again, but this is not something you typically see in the deck. This was drawn from a Spell World, but now that he's shown that he had the card, he can't surprise his opponent with a Triton Banquet anymore. He has to, Shadow Blue will expect that now, which is a powerful tool.
It's kind of interesting to play the Triton Chef there, because generally you want to keep that hidden if it is a card that you have. Keep it hidden in your hand so that you can play it and the Banquet on one turn and not reveal that bit of information to your opponent, especially in a situation like this where the Triton Warrior looked like it was already going to collect off of both wells anyway. Maybe just trying to play around something like a Bomb Slinger and ensure that you have a creature down onto the board, but it's, the Banquet in hand is now going to clear off this Underground Boss.
And he had the option to Gift of Steel there. Obviously, his line of thinking was, I don't want to be Frogified, which Kumpelkeffer does happen to have in hand. But yeah, big punish here in the form of, he's basically giving away. He knew the Triton Banquet was in hand. So, this is just obviously going to happen. At least I think so. And now 2 Frogifies in hand for Kumpelkeffer. So it's going to be a while before Shadow Blue is going to be able to, keep a big, juicy minion on the board without risk of the Frogify. And if Wave Crash Colossus is able to be placed next to the face, all of a sudden Kumpelkeffer is really close to winning the game.
Yeah, definitely. As much as we talked about Cypher being very strong on the turn 2 play, the plays that Kumpelkeffer has made to completely move to the other side of the board and really ignore that power that Cypher can become over the early course of the game. He's really done a great job to swing the game in his favor of just this really strong positioning at this stage. I'm going to go for the Frogify instead of the Triton Banquet just to deny that extra value from the combat ability.
Yeah, that surprises me. I wasn't expecting that, but that's exactly why I did that. However, Shadow Blue has 9 Faeria, so I wonder if that's really worth it. Here is the Ground Shaker, though. He has 3 Faeria left over, and he can just clear with the Flame Burst. So, yeah, ends up with 0 Faeria, and that extra 2 Faeria would be relevant in the following turn.
Yeah, really nice there to get the clear. Also denying your opponent from collecting, very big in that situation. Ninja Toad going to come down, can actually double collect, and then +1 for Aurora is a big swing back for Kumpelkeffer.
Look at how reflexively these players play. Look at you can just see their experience. Now, luckily there's no, even if there was a Ground Shaker, he thought that through too. Like, don't think for a second he didn't think it through. Like, okay, I'm gonna have my minions left at 1, my creatures left at 1, so, Is he going to be able to play Ground Shaker? No, he'll be at 4. So, okay, I'll just do this real quick. Bam, 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 bam. Like, that's really impressive. Like, if you've played Faeria before, that's, at least me. Maybe I'm just really bad, but I take a long time to figure out what these players are figuring out very quickly. Very reflexive play.
Shadow Blue does have another Bomb Slinger picked up, could +1 Faeria, Bomb Slinger the 6/1, but because that dies so easily to Aurora, I think it's probably not worth it in this situation. Maybe we'll see Cypher step into a double collection spot and then set up for possibly a Ground Shaker pickup next turn. Maybe even Firestorm would be good as well for the AoE clear. But getting a little dicey here because that Colossus coming down, even if you're able to put it in not the greatest position right beside the orb, even a space away, that Triton Banquet in hand does allow for the jump to come through.
And a pretty dead hand here for Shadow Blue. You don't want to waste that Bomb Slinger on a 6/1, then lose it to Aurora. So now with this Prophet of Tides draw, Kumpelkeffer can move his Ninja Toad over, hop into enemy land, make a lake. If he wants to do this, make a lake next to his opponent for that Wave Crash Colossus later on. Here is the Prophet. He can clear Cypher and do all of this at the same time. I think this is what we're seeing. There's the lake, offensive position, good for a Mystic Beast as well. And wow, what a great play.
Yeah, very strong position now. Going to be double collecting with that Aurora. Going to be set up to collect another well with this Prophet of Tides. Maybe even move to double collection with it as well. And you really start to take full economy control over the game. And as soon as you can start to get 1 or 2 creatures down, you can just continue to deny anything that the red player puts onto the board. Does open up the Axe Grinder position, which is really interesting here for Shadow Blue if he chooses to take it.
Such a bad hand for Shadow Blue. Bomb Slingers are not what you want against this board. Axe Grinder is the only option. I mean, I guess that's not that bad. Emperor's Command takes that to 3 with a Triton Banquet. Okay, well, still can't clear that with Aurora quite yet. Gonna draw for a Triton Warrior. So yeah, okay, this turn didn't turn out as bad for Shadow Blue as I was fearing.
We should see the Colossus come down just because of the sheer power that it represents here.
And this is what you want to use your Bomb Slingers on, but you need a follow-up. You need either a second creature to follow up or that Flame Burst. Well, hey, look at that Flame Burst. Now, is that the right thing to do? Just by looking at the board, I'd say so, and you can clear the Triton Warrior as well.
And now it's actually a very difficult position of, do you want to kill off everything on the right side and leave yourself a little exposed to just 1 Colossus hit and then clear it next turn and really ensure that you take control? Because right now, Bomb Slinger, Flame Burst could kill off the Colossus, like you're saying, use the Axe Rider to kill off the Triton Warrior, but then you don't reset the collection. Aurora still double collecting on the right, that Prophet still in collection position on the top left, and then another Colossus comes down, then what do you do? So it could be a position where you want to play a little slower, allow that Colossus hit, and then respond to that on the follow-up.
It does put him on the back foot, and so he decides instead to do something completely different, move the aggressive with his Axe Grinder, even play an Underground Brigand, clear that 4/4 with the Bomb Slinger. He's going to take 7 to the face, and he's happy with that.
And one of the things this does as well is it forces your opponent to make the land. Now, you do have the Banquet, so maybe your opponent could go for that, but that still reduces the amount of pressure they can have with the rest of their cards. Instead of a situation where you have your opponent drawing. So we know this land has to come down just because you still want to get that hit to the orb. So it does force your opponent's hand a little bit as well, but now you're going to take another 7 damage on the upcoming turn.
Triton Banquet, allowing the clear with the Prophet of Tides finally used. Now this Bomb Slinger can trade the following turn, and hopefully this is the last 7 damage that Shadow Blue will take any time soon. Keep in mind, Kumpelkeffer does run that Emperor's Command, so if he needs to heal from Shadow Blue going on the offensive, he has that option.
I think Emperor's Command's just better to kill off the Bomb Slinger here.
Why
Don't
not?
even need it for the life gain. You can kill that right off. Jump
Now
this
he's-
across, leaves you enough for the Mystic Beast, and even killing off the Colossus with the Flame Burst here, it's still going to be a lot of damage with this Mystic Beast coming through.
Now you're forced to use the Flame Burst. Now you don't have a creature on board other than the Underground Brigand to harvest, so you can hit face for 2. An extra 2 this turn. That means after you play Flame Burst, you're going to have to... Well, he's just going full face. Okay, no, okay, that's right. You get the 2 and then you get the Flame Burst. Okay.
Yeah, generate the extra Faeria off the orb hit there and still have that Flame Burst, but that doesn't win you the race. It is, you're going to deal 5 next turn. That only takes your opponent to 9. We see the Frogify come out. We could have also seen just another Colossus dropped. It still would have been impossible for Shadow Blue to come back against these creatures, but very interesting kind of mid-game lines, and really nicely played by Kumpelkeffer to reset to the right side and really prioritize that economy collection and then work towards the Colossus, and nothing Shadow Blue could do to keep up.
Well played by the German player, taking game 1 with blue jump, without any Triton trainers as far as I saw, which is the recently nerfed card. There was really no options there, I think, for Shadow Blue at the end. He runs no taunts in his deck that I saw. So just sweeping up his board, recognizing it's over, and moving on to the next game. And we're not really sure what we might see, but red is out of the picture for Shadow Blue. So we could see him try and answer with the mirror, possibly, with blue, or even yellow events might be good. Crackthorn, the table's wide open for him, although Crackthorn would be tough.
Yeah, Crackthorn would be a little tougher, having seen all of the cards that were in that red deck there. I'm almost wondering what we even call this blue deck now, because with the Triton Trainers gone, if there aren't any, because I don't think we've seen any through anybody who's played the blue so far, but it's still running Triton Warriors. Is it still really jump, or is it kind of a mid-range blue now?
It's like a mix. Yeah, it's like a mix of mid-range blue and jump. I've seen a deck called Blue Conquest before, and there's a lot of different names for it, but it's certainly, a new type of, I would say, hybrid. And that's, you probably couldn't strictly call it blue jump, but it definitely has a lot of jumpers. Anyway, Shadow Blue with yellow. Yellow events, I'd imagine, might see some chargers. Kalim in hand at the start is a very nice thing to have always.
Yeah, really nice here. Could go for something with the Explorer and get that Outland Ranger down as fast as possible, but generally you want to get Kalim down on turn 2. This still allows you to do that. It just gets that extra collection down even quicker with having the Outland Ranger in your opening hand.
Yeah, with this line of play, you'll have to put Kalim next to your orb, which means he's opened up for harvesting the right side, and with a Flash Wind that's really deadly and powerful, but there's no Flash Wind in hand. Kumpelkeffer is going to assume that. Spell Whirl into Spell Whirl, that's what we like to see, but there's an Aurora's Dream in one of those. He does not want that Aurora's Dream. Azure Wisp as well, and a Ruby Fish, so he got a Frogify out of 2 Spell Whirls and a bunch of other cards too. Ruby Fish could see some work in this matchup.
Yeah, and depending on the way that the game goes, the Azure Wisp even could, if you play it in the right way and then collect so that it becomes a 4/4 on that turn, sometimes can be very good in this matchup, especially against something like the Chargers, even like the Shaitan Demons as well, to control the board. Azure Wisp is something that could have some value.
Yeah, it's not really that bad a card. It's not very popular to run in highly competitive decks, but it has great synergy with everything blue wants to do, which is harvest from the enemy well. So we might not see it come out this turn, but I predict we'll see that drop at some point in this game while these players sort of dance around the wells and get that early harvesting phase of the game done with these mid-rangeist decks, I would call them.
Yep, and then Shadow Blue's turn here, kind of already set just what we had said before. It's going to be Kalim. Probably won't play the Campfire onto either of these creatures just because you don't need to yet, even though your opponent knows that you have it in hand. Just saving it for either using on Kalim if you are going to clear off the Triton Warrior, or using it on to the Ranger if you need to kill off a Battletoad, something like that, for instance. But you want to keep that in hand until you actually need to use it. But even with the Windstorm Charger picked up, I'd still expect to see Kalim coming out from Shadow Blue.
Yep, I think that's the best possible line of action. There we go. He wants to draw a movement trick of some kind. There's the Windstorm Charger. Colossus in hand for the first time for Kumpelkeffer, but early stages of the game, no harvesting done from the enemy well yet, but he is setting it up. There's the land, making it possible next turn. Ruby Fish goes off to harvest on the left. What a trooper. And we see some toads pop out.
Ooh, another Outland Ranger picked up. Really wanted to get any kind of movement like you were talking about there. Would have allowed Kalim to zip up and kill off the Warrior there. Otherwise, next turn, Kumpelkeffer could be in a position where Frogify comes out to deal with Kalim and get a lot of value that way.
Yeah, I mean he has the option of using Last Nightmare on the frog on the toad, sorry, but you or the Triton. Let's call him a Triton. But you don't really want to do that when you know you have Colossus coming. So that's generally what you want to save those for. This is a tough turn. He still hasn't drawn, still hasn't made a land. He's going to want to do if he does want to draw. He's going to want to do that first, of course, as you know. So yeah, what do you do here? This is what makes great Faeria players great. Now both of these players are great. They're in the semifinals of the monthly cup, which is no small task. Shadow Blue took out the bounty hunter that took out Zarakar, who was the second place finisher from last cup. Kumpelkeffer has taken out Don Pork, Imperia even, who was the fourth place player, I believe, from last cup. So these players have earned their way to this spot. They know what they're doing. I'm not even going to predict what you should do here because it's such a difficult turn. It looks like he's going to set himself up for a charger to harvest and let that toad clear the ranger without a campfire. So I think you campfire the ranger here.
Yeah, it's actually really awkward. I think you have to go for the ranger instead, just because you don't want to give your opponent that not only the free clear, but you've given them the land to jump the toad to and collect as well. So kind of looked really awkward. I was kind of expecting the charger to come down, but then once Shadow Blue made the lands, I think he realized, oh no, I've given my opponent a really good land position there to jump to. So had to go for the ranger instead, which still looks like a fine play in the end.
Yeah, he's set himself up to where he can lose the 2 health ranger, but his opponent will have to make lands out in that direction to do so. But then he could also clear the 3 health ranger by taking the other frog. And Ruby Fish could see combat this turn and taking out the 3. I think this Ruby Fish is going to be a warrior. That's my prediction.
Using the prairies here, you would set a prairie down into the bottom right. Triton Warrior can collect there, and then a prairie between the 4/3 Ranger, this position that he's hovering currently, and then you use, like you're saying, the Ruby Fish and the Battle Toads to clear off both Outland Rangers, and that should set you into a decent enough position.
And he's also moving his land forward on the right side, and there's the Azure Wisp. Sorry, I got excited for that Azure Wisp. There's that double harvest from the enemy. Well, by the way, it's worth pointing out that Shadow Blue is playing as Krog, so he does have advantage in that respect. I believe those are the Krog orbs as well. Now, Kumpelkeffer, 2 4/4s in the field, commanding position. There's that movement that Shadow Blue is looking for. This is going to allow him to clear that Triton Warrior on the right side.
It's interesting in this position because you could go for clearing the Azure Wisp before it gets bigger and bigger. But if you clear off the Warrior, you actually deny your opponent from collecting from your well, and you stop the Wisp from getting bigger as well. So much more important here to clear off the Warrior because it's going to collect from the well, discounting the Colossus. So yeah, much more important to clear that off instead of the Wisp in that position.
Right, exactly. And this Wisp can harvest. There's a second Triton Warrior in hand. That Aurora's Dream is a dead card, by the way. You might as well have 4 cards in hand. I don't think we'll ever see that in this game. I'll eat my shoe if so. Don't quote me on that. So I think he just placed the Triton Warrior back. Try and regain the board here, get some board position. These Colossus are too expensive to play right now. I mean, they're still good, 7/7 for 7, but they're just going to get Last Nightmare predictably. So yeah, I think it's a pretty passive turn here. Just drop a frog and maybe even make a lake while you can. Yeah, right there. Yeah, it's a good play.
Yeah, really important to get that interior well position for your Mystic Beasts and for once you do start dropping these Colossus down. Very surprised he's just going to give away the free trade with the Warrior here.
He's offering it up on a silver platter. Take my Triton Warrior, he says. And Shadow Blue probably will do that as he has no other option here. He has a Time of Legends in hand, which unfortunately he already drew his Kalim, so I don't think he's going to want to I don't think he runs Iona or anything, so a little bit of a gamble if he does want to play it. Windstorm Charger coming down. Yeah, you probably want to save your Time of Legends for using that Windstorm Charger. And there's a trade.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he does go for the Time of Legends and if we're able to see what comes out of that, if he gets something good in the course of the game here. But Prophet of Tides picked up now could be used to get this Azure Wisp into an aggressive position if Kumpelkeffer wants to go for that, but I almost expect it'll just be collect and then go for Battletoads. Both very good cards. If you can get both Battletoads to trade into the Charger, you can deny the value from your opponent over that, but something like a Soul Drain can swing value back the other way. So,
and here's the opportunity where if Kumpelkeffer goes right with that Azure Wisp, he's going to open up his orb. to lots of damage. And this is where Shadow Blue can go on the offensive before Kumpelkefer can ever get those Colossi going. There is a Prophet of Tides in hand, which allows for some trickery, however. The Battletoads will make it a little bit trickier. We'll see what happens here, but
could step first with the Azure Wisp onto the collection spot, and then have Prophet down in the bottom corner the exact way that he did, and had the Azure Wisp actually step into double collection, and then that would have given you the extra Faeria to play Battletoads. Kind of a passive play, and instead, Kumpelkefer goes for clearing the Charger before it can really get any event synergy. Really nice play in that situation, but kind of had a spot there where he could have just loaded the board with a lot of small stuff.
Yeah, I think in hindsight that might have been the best because Chargers are just such a threat. They're just such powerhouses in this yellow events deck. I mean, it's called yellow events, and Chargers really get a lot of the benefit from that. So I think that's a good play to do. He is going to go on the offense. Shadow Blue only has 3 threatening the orb. These Colossi are 6 now, but he can't play one this turn. Emperor's Command in this blue deck. So, I mean, I guess...
And you know the Colossus is going to get cleared right away with Last Nightmare if your opponent has it, but there's possibly some value for Kumpelkefer going for, hit the orb for 3 with this Prophet, and then try to set up your Colossus in a position where you can go for the counter race here, especially with that self-damage coming out from the Demon. The command maybe could be used for heal, give you an extra turn, but I think it's so close of the Colossus just being cleared off by Last Nightmare that maybe you don't think you can get value from going for the race.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I said it. He couldn't play it this turn, but I guess what I really meant is if you do play it this turn, you're playing it at last Nightmare. So yeah, it's do you want to trade 6 for 6, and do just 3 damage to the orb while your opponent's going to be doing 8 each turn? Of course, you're actually doing 5 because there's a demon on the field. So yeah, I think it's really tough here. I do think that Battletoads is a great play because it does allow you to clear the Roger Fanatic. It does allow you to get those Colossus even cheaper, so you're spending net at least 2 less Faeria. In the following turn, probably even less because you'll harvest twice. I like the Battletoads play, but I could see going for the Colossus play here as well.
And that is what he chooses to go for. Could have gone even for a lake to block off the Demon and play the Battletoads that way, but one of the nice things here is because of the positioning of the Demon, you force your opponent to make land, and that actually denies them from drawing cards or gaining extra Faeria, anything along that line. So once the Last Nightmare comes out, you know that that's it. It's just Last Nightmare, no other follow-up. So unfortunately for Kumpelkefer, though, he has no follow-up either. It's got to be maybe +1 Faeria and Battletoads because you just don't have the Faeria to play the Colossus here.
Yeah, I mean, you went all in kind of with that Colossus here. Now you have not much Faeria to work with, 3 to be specific. You couldn't just stop hitting face, go backward, harvest, ping for Faeria, take your Colossus to 5, and drop another Colossus and go all in again with him. And this time, yeah, like we're saying, no Last Nightmare you would think, and even if it is used, it's a 1 Faeria loss. So 8 damage to face here. Is there 1 extra for Kumpelkefer at any... he's gonna have to draw for something here.
You're gonna have to draw for maybe a Wind Soldier, maybe another Outland Ranger if he's running 3 in here. I think we only saw 2. Unfortunately for Kumpelkefer, I don't think he wins the race even on this next turn. He currently has 10 damage, and then the 2 self-burn from the Demon is going to be 1 off for him as well. So it just looks like this is going to be Shadow Blue's game, kind of regardless of the heals or the damage that's currently on board for both players.
If only there were a yellow haste legendary creature, or even a neutral haste legendary, he could use that Time of Legends to certainly draw it and win the game. But alas, it is not to be. Going to Harvest here for the Fanatic allows him to play a second Fanatic. Ooh, really clever high-level play there. Getting the maximum value. Min-maxing his Faeria use here by just having another unit on the board and still hitting the orb, still doing the face damage. And he's touching the Emperor's Command here, and I think he's going to take care of that Prophet of Tides.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to kill that off. And like you said, really high-level play there of putting yourself in a position where even if, you're playing in a way that, okay, maybe my opponent can come out with something that ends up clearing the board here, I have to play in the right ways possible. And playing that Fanatic really does that. And Shadow Blue takes a great game there.
And Krog wins again, as is tradition. 1-1 now, tied up in this best of 5. Both players' starting decks are eliminated. That means no more blue for Kumpel and no more red for Shadow Blue. Shadow Blue will be locked into this yellow events deck, and we'll have to see what Kumpel wants to bring against that. It looks like he's taken some time to decide.
Yeah, we've seen some interesting matchups kind of over the course of the day towards yellow events. We've seen blue beat it. We've seen green-red Crackthorn beat it. We've seen the red control from Arianel in that last series. So Kumpel Kefir, with having just played the blue, maybe we'll see that green-red come out, or we'll see the yellow, just the mirror match.
Yeah, tough choice to make. We're about to find out in a second, and it is yellow versus yellow, although slight differences I noticed already. Soul Pact could be one of those, but he could run it as well. But yeah, it looks like going to be a yellow events versus yellow events. We'll have to pay very close attention to the subtle differences in these decks and how each player plays them. The starting player will be Shadow Blue.
Yeah, the really nice plays coming out from both players to start the game off with here. Shadow Blue gets that Outland Ranger, going to be able to combo that then into the Windstorm Charger. But Kumpel Kefir starting with the Time of Legend means he's going to be able to pull Kaleem from his deck very quickly. And, turn 2 Kaleem, we've seen how powerful that can be throughout the course of games.
Guaranteed to have Kaleem next turn, whether he draws it or not. Playing that Campfire on the Ranger there to play against Soul Drain, which is a common play in yellow mirrors. Means you're going to have to use a Wind Soldier to clear that now, and you'll get plenty of harvest before then. So, Time of Legends, is that what we see?
I would definitely expect that's the play that we see. If there was a Charger, maybe you go for that instead, but just getting this Kaleem out is... it's incredibly powerful, especially with the Fanatic and the Flash Wind in hand. You can do so many things with him here to control the board, especially against even something like the Outland Ranger. It can get a very good clear if you see a Charger come down from your opponent and you're able to find a Ranger of your own and get that Campfire down onto Kaleem, then you're able to clear that. It's just able to exert so much pressure over the course of the early game here, and your opponent's not going to be able to clear it with a Last Nightmare. Maybe a Choking Sand could gain some value back, and then you kind of are in a really bad spot from there, but it's just not going to be able to be cleared efficiently right now.
Yeah, because he opened with that double Faeria, it means this turn he cannot Last Nightmare, which means Kaleem gets to do something. In this case, that something may be a Flash Wind onto the face. It does allow him to put a Desert right next to the face and start Kaleeming, start throwing followers at him. It's a little bit of a all-in kind of thing, but it is an option. Soul Drain here, not very useful with this board state, not able to clear anything. He wants to Wind Soldier something, but he could actually just Wind Soldier this turn, double Prairie to the left, pop that Wind Soldier onto the Ranger, and just harvest with Kaleem and see what happens.
Is unfortunately one Faeria off of being able to play the Fanatic as the extra movement. And then Wind Soldier and Soul Drain and get a full clear of the board here. So it looks like it would have to be Flash Wind to go for that full clear type of play. But yeah, like you're saying, it could go for the Wind Soldier, just double Prairie up to the top left, use the Wind Soldier to kill off the Outland Ranger, and then Kaleem and the Soul Drain can kill off the Charger, if that's the play he chooses to go for. Could also go for just double collecting with Kaleem for now, but it definitely looks like you need to make as much pressure as possible to clear off everything on the board.
Looks like he's going for something similar to what you're suggesting. There it is. Fanatic plus Flash Wind onto the 2/4 Wind Storm Charger. When a Soldier takes with the Soul Drain, then hitting with the Kaleem, and yeah, there's the full clear with the Wind Soldier. Wow, that's a very complicated play, and I have to admit, I did not see that line of play, and that is devastating for Shadow Blue.
Yeah, definitely much different than the one that I was envisioning of playing the Wind Soldier up on your own well. This just ensures that you get that aggressive desert placement down. Obviously very good for all of your creatures, but once you get your Colossus, it's an incredibly good positioning to have it right beside the orb. But even just for the course of like your Shaitan Demons, once you start drawing into them, you really want them to be in aggressive positions. You don't want it to be sitting in front of your own orb. So do see the Soul Drain come down and that Demon trying to clear off Kaleem here, but we'll have to see, because Kumpel Kefir did unload his whole hand. He's going to need to just draw into cards.
Unfortunately, Shadow Blue was sitting on a lot of Faeria that last turn. He had 7 total, able to stop at double harvesting, put down a threat to Kaleem, which means Shadow Blue, he did make the desert before. So I think he's going to use this follower for harvesting, though, this turn, set up a slower game. No, am I wrong?
It's actually really difficult right now, because you could set the follower up aggressively, and then actually put it in between the demon and protect your Kaleem a little bit more. Instead of having something like a Flash Wind come out or a Fanatic from your opponent, and that's exactly what he goes for, just trying to keep Kaleem alive, and there is the Flash Wind picked up.
That is a heads-up play. Now, if he wants to do that, he has to waste a Wind Soldier to clear that free Column's follower that just popped out of Column's backpack. I don't know where he keeps all his followers, but I don't think that's worth it. Wow, yeah, I really like that play. Kumpelkeffer is playing this deck really impressively to me. I know if I use this deck, I would not be able to master it as much as he have. Now he's forced to use that Last Nightmare on Kaleem, which is, it's a loss in Faeria, a loss in net Faeria.
It's a little bit unfortunate for Kumpelkeffer. He wasn't able to get another desert onto the far side, and that gives you 2 attack alleys instead of just being limited to 1. Really nice pickup with the Outland Ranger. Now you could use the Wind Soldier and that campfire generated by the Ranger to kill off the demon. It's interesting if he wants to go for that, because the self-damage is actually starting to pile up for Shadow Blue.
And yeah, you're right, 15 health now. 13 next turn, and this demon is a long way from the enemy orb. There's going to be at least 4 turns without a movement, so 8 damage. If he just leaves it on board, he takes 8 damage. If Kumpelkeffer leaves it on board, I'm not quite sure if we'll see that, but instead, passive harvesting. Ooh, Wind Soldier.
Looks like he is
so
going to go
passive.
for the clear this turn. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I feel like I'd be really tempted to just leave it on board and let the damage pile up as a yellow player. It's not too difficult to finish it off after it takes so much damage. But yeah, the Faeria advantage is real. That would be gained from leaving that on board.
Yeah, and that's the big thing right now is Kumpelkeffer just wants to continue to deny Faeria from the opponent in this stage. Should see that Shaitan Demon come down and start to put the aggression on, but leaving your opponent's demon, even with the benefit of the self-damage coming through and reducing the power that they can, or the time that they have to play with, it really is important to deny that Faeria here, deny every option that your opponent has. So that is really why we saw Kumpelkeffer actually go for the clear there.
And now Kumpelkeffer with his own demon to hit, and his demon, of course, is much closer to the enemy than Shadow Blue's was. Lots of pressure on Shadow Blue's orb. Many cards in his hand, but only 6 Faeria. No great answer for this demon at this time. He can clear it, which I think he's going to do. Afterwards, though, can he play the Charger as well? Let's see, 3. It's only 1, actually, so he goes to 5, and he Soul Drains and wins. Yeah, he can play the Charger this turn as well.
Yeah, Charger could come down, whether you want it in a more aggressive position or if you want it in that closer to your own orb spot there. Just the Charger just needs to survive so that you can start collecting Faeria and start building your way back into the game. We see Shadow Blue with the Time of Legends in hand. That means he's going to be able to pull Kaleem from his deck and try to swing the game back through that. But now that we see the Colossus come out, this could be very strong from Kumpelkeffer.
The first Colossus in hand for Kumpelkeffer, a 5 cost currently. Well, it'll remain 5 cost. That he has the option of playing this turn, very strong, next to the opponent's face.
I think you have to continue to deny here. So you could use Kaleem's training on the Outland Ranger and get it up to collect off of the bottom right well, and that'll give you the 1 extra Faeria to play the Last Nightmare, and you get your Ranger into either double collect position for next turn or aggressive if you want to zip it to the face. But I think you have to play the Last Nightmare because your Colossus, if you allow that Charger to survive, does represent collecting enough to Last Nightmare the Colossus.
One thing I noticed over the course of this game is that all my plays are put it next to the face, and all of Kumpelkeffer's plays are clear the board and gain control. So he's probably not going to follow my advice. He probably is going to do pretty much close to what you're saying and just maintain control of the board, harvest as much as possible over his opponent. But no, he goes for my play. I'm so happy. Not that, it's my play, but it's a pretty clear play. Yeah, the Windstorm Colossus comes down, and surprisingly to me, though, does not put it next to the opponent's orb. However, he does have that Column's training, which, if he wants to, he can just dash it on over.
Yeah, this is a really smart dash with the Colossus. Like you're saying, he could have put it right next to the orb so that he could hit for the damage next turn, but putting it in this position actually denies the charger from collecting off of the well in a decent way. You'd have to possibly double prairie between the wells and use a flash win in order to get that position, and that means you actually can't +1 for the last nightmare. So yeah, Kumpelkeffer just playing over all of the options. What can my opponent do next turn, and how do I play around it, and really making the right steps in this game.
Yeah, unfortunately can't get that last nightmare out. That would be super ideal at this time. I wonder if it's worth trying to block. Nah, I don't think you would block the Colossus and worrying about the Columns training. But I think now what Kumpelkeffer will do is Columns training that Colossus over onto the face and deal 8 damage to poor Krog.
Yeah, Shadow Blue in this position going for the clear because he thinks he's safer than he really is. He thinks he's kind of got an extra turn, unless your opponent has the movement trick to move the Colossus, but this training is going to be 8 damage now, and that's going to set up a possible 2-turn clear by getting, or 2-turn lethal by getting this Windstorm Charger down as well.
Yes, now Shadow Blue cannot play that last nightmare. Amazing, says Krog. Last nightmare is what he wants to play. See, he can't play. Oh, he can. Okay, after harvest. Yeah, so I think that's what we will see. But yeah, there's still a 2/4 next to face. How many events in hand for Kumpelkeffer? Well, 2 last nightmares, so not going to get a huge amount of damage from that. But the clock is ticking for Shadow Blue. These players are tied up 1-1. There's a flash win coming out here.
Yeah, just going to come back down to collect. Unfortunate for Shadow Blue, that he doesn't have the extra Faeria, because Outland Ranger and the Campfire would allow him to clear off the Charger, as well as using the last nightmare on the Colossus here. But you have to kill the Colossus. There's no other option in this situation.
Yeah, and yeah, he used that flash win basically to gain a Faeria. I think he's happy if the Charger hits the Fanatical. He's not happy, but I think he doesn't want it to hit the orb with a bunch of events. And there's a Columns training, which means it can hit the orb. For an extra 3 damage. That's 5, taking Krog down to 4. And not a lot of healing. Well, there's probably, I haven't been keeping track of the soul drains, but going to low health isn't super damning for Shadow Blue. And there's a soul drain. So nice little answer here for at least one of the creatures.
And going for the Wind Soldier as well, you can double collect and clear both off and really stop that aggression. As much as you're talking about getting low down into your life total, having the soul drains to recover, I think the bigger issue is if you're running something like the soul packs, something that we see these event type of decks run for the event synergy, obviously, but also for the extra Faeria that it can generate. Once you get lower and lower and you're not able to play those soul packs, you end up with dead cards in hand, and that's almost worse than having the low health of just your opponent hitting you.
And if I remember correctly, on the mulligan, Shadow Blue did have soul pacts. We just haven't seen them redrawn. Dash canceled in the Colossus there, puts him in the offensive position, 1 tile away from Krog's poor face, which is just getting abused terribly. Going to block that with a Shaitan Demon to take the Colossus down to 2, and he'll have to play some kind of follow-up. But he's just looking to survive here. Meanwhile, Kumpelkeffer is harvesting. He has board control. He has options. He has a full hand almost. And yeah, we could even see, wow, I wonder if he even drops a Shaitan Demon right next to his opponent's orb and clears this Shaitan Demon with his Colossus and puts 12 damage next to Krog, which does threaten lethal.
Yeah, either the Demon or the Charger coming down now, just because of the events in hand, does represent a lot of damage coming out on the next turn. Shadow Blue will need to draw a Soul Drain or a Wind Soldier to clear off the Colossus, and Wind Soldier is a great pickup. Does allow him to kill the Colossus, gain enough Faeria to play the Outland Ranger, even Campfire the Outland Ranger if he wants to, so that it represents killing off the Demon here.
I feel like almost every Wind Soldier Shadow Blue has played has cost 1 Faeria, because he does this every time, which is great. That's what you want to do. And yeah, we'll see that Outland Ranger, I think, block the Demon after he clears his Colossus. There's a Flash Wind. Yeah, not going to do much for you right here, but the perfect amount of Faeria to do this play. Hopefully, Shadow Blue is hoping this Ranger does not get cleared by any sort of nefarious play. However, with Columns training and a Campfire, he doesn't have any movement, so yeah, he's going to have to combat this poor Outland Ranger. Oh, Flash Wind, that changes everything. Oh my goodness, no.
Flash Wind is a really big pickup. You can even go for the Charger in behind to keep the Demon a little safer. Doesn't even have to go for it this turn. Can clear it off, which is exactly what he goes for, and play the Charger as a reinforcement here.
This is the more control-based play, as we are talking about earlier. This is what Kumpel Keffer is going to go for, taking control of the board, making it even more certain that he has the ability to just finish Shadow Blue off. Shadow Blue flicking his cards around, saying amazing. I don't really think he thinks those cards are amazing. Going, wow, look at the speed of that flicking. That is a fast finger, ladies and gentlemen.
That's top-notch APM right there.
High APM there. Oh, my goodness. StarCraft player, potentially. Time of Legends could be played to... oh, my goodness. What if he gets Iona from Time of Legends and then he can't attack into Iona? There's no Soul Drain in hand. I think Iona is the play. Scorch.
Well, he's already drawn, so it wouldn't be able to get it in the hand right away.
Well, no, I mean from Time of Legends for Shadow Blue.
Yeah, because Time of Legends shuffles into your deck. So he would have had to play Time of Legends and then draw, hoping that you would get Iona there. But
my line of play was just terrible. Don't listen to me. There we go, Kumpel Keffer, German player, taking it 2-1. He is on match point over Shadow Blue, who's going to have to use his final deck. And as a reminder, we've seen red from him, yellow events, blue is wide open, green is wide open for him. Let's see what he chooses against Kumpel's very effective yellow events deck.
And it is just going to be a blue. I was kind of hopeful for a minute we might see similar to King Dan's with the green-blue enchant type of style left over, just because those colors are both still remaining for Shadow Blue here, but it does look like it's just going to be this mono blue that we've been seeing throughout the course of the day.
Yeah, no 3 wishes, unfortunately, in this matchup, which is a crowd pleaser, at least for me. Outland Ranger opening with the double Prairie, pretty standard for this sort of deck. And we'll see Shadow Blue with the Explorer card with a few options here. There's funny things you can do with a Water Elemental and an Explorer card, and I think we're probably going to see one of them.
Yeah, you definitely want to use that, especially with the Prophet of Tides. Even if your opponent goes for the Campfire onto this Outland Ranger, you're still fine trading the Water Elemental because you're going to have the Prophet to use it to double collect here. So really strong opening from Shadow Blue, it looks like.
Yeah, and he goes toward the opponent's land to contest Kumpel Keffer's harvesting. He could have gone right and gone more for the open area to get that enemy harvesting in, but no. So Prophet of Tides, like you're saying, could be done. It allows him to double harvest, clear this harvester. Seems like a great play to me.
Yeah, it sets your Prophet up in a double collection spot. Could even go for the Prophet on the right side if he chooses to, but then you're really leaving your lands exposed on the left because you're going to move that forwardmost lake anyway. The water elemental is going to land on, so I think you really want to put the Prophet over on the left in the double collection spot and have it in a good position for whatever your opponent's follow-up is.
Yeah, there it is. I think he's going exactly for the double collect. Prophet of Tides on that space. Here goes the land. Bloop, bloop. Gets that harvest in. And bye-bye Ranger. Kumpel Keffer will have to drop his Charger or Demon as a follow-up play, depending on what he draws. But excellent play there from Shadow Blue.
Yep, this is looking in a really good position. Could even drop the Demon and the Windstorm Charger. And that actually sets Kumpel Keffer up really nicely to contest whatever Shadow Blue's follow-up is here. But even just playing kind of double Battletoads, if Shadow Blue's able to play that next turn, would be really strong. The Battletoads just trade so nicely into the Windstorm Charger, or just out-collect your opponent because you have so many more creatures on board.
Yeah, and one thing that blue does that is super annoying to yellow decks, to yellow event decks that use a lot of mobility, is they break up the land. And, they stop that Charger from dashing all around willy-nilly from where it wants to, at least into a certain point in the early game. Demon will come down, and that's 1 health away from being destroyed. Shadow Blue doesn't have that extra damage in hand. Just a bunch of toads, 2 handfuls of toads. What's he going to do with all those toads? Flash Wind to stop the double harvesting. Play a Charger. He's just playing everything. 2 cards left in hand.
Yeah, that's a really nice position to step that in between and stop your opponent collecting. Of course, we talk about it all the time in these decks that the collection isn't just about the extra one Faeria from collecting off the well. You really double down on it because of the value that it provides towards your Colossus discounts in the late game. So a couple of very useful cards picked up off of the spell world there. You can go Aurora's Disciple and then follow that up with Battletoads. Start getting that Disciple snowballing here, but that really doesn't do anything to stop your opponent's creatures. And looks like you're just going to give away some decent clears.
Yeah, I mean, this positioning was so great against the Prophet of Tides. He can trade this turn. And yeah, like you're saying, drop Battletoad and yeah, potentially just lose another Toad for free. This Disciple, from that spell world, not designed to be in this deck. There aren't a lot of too many cheap events for the Disciple to benefit from. But that being said, there are 3 events in Shadow Blue's hand, so assuming Disciple does survive for a few turns, it could become a threat. But of course, you generally want to build a deck more around that card to make it work well. Mirror Phantasm changes everything. Hello, from the top, had it in the hand the whole time if you ask Shadow Blue, and that allows him to clear that 2/4 off, and what a great turnaround.
That is an unbelievable draw there. Shadow Blue just really analyzing what his outs were and just thinking, what's the cards I can draw into versus what are the options that I have in hand. Really valued whatever he could draw into, and then it looked like a few backup plans depending on what he drew, but Mirror Phantasm is just unbelievable there. Had the right Faeria, had the right positioning, gets a very good clear onto the Charger to get the value out of the Phantasm there.
And Phantasm is not a card that we've been seeing in a lot of blue decks. Well, I'm speaking specifically of the previous monthly cups and then on the ladder. This is something that's creeped in recently. Seems that players are not they're shying away from the trainer and replacing it with new cards such as the Phantasm, which is a very powerful tool in a lot of different matchups. There are 2 Toads to deal with that are going to be harvesting. Last Nightmare is the last thing you want to do to a Toad. Toad's dreams are generally fairly nice. This Campfire is going to allow Kumbelkefer at least some option here to double trade these Toads out.
Yeah, and the big thing there is the Battletoads both played between the wells. Nothing that Kumbelkefer could have done apart from maybe 2 Soul Drains to stop these from collecting on the next turn, and any creature that he played down was immediately going to get dealt with. We do see the Outland Ranger Campfire itself, so maybe one of the Battletoads trades into this and the other one is still too far away, but we actually see Orisei coming down. This is a deck that may actually be able to take some advantage of that.
Orisei, not extremely bad in this situation. Very expensive. Going to have to wait a turn or 2 to play it. Also, Aurora's Trick is interesting because guess what has 2 attack or less, Scorch?
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, the Charger, of course. And taking control of a Charger is just going to be devastating for Kumbelkefer. Of course, he's going to have to get up to 5 lakes if he wants to play that. And there's 4 lakes. So I think he does want to put himself in a position where Aurora's Trick is a reality. And my goodness, that's going to surprise Kumbelkefer quite a lot. There may be some table flipping involved.
Yeah, Aurora's Trick is a very interesting one. For this matchup specifically, when you can take that the Charger, it just denies so much value from your opponent. And Shadow Blue, with that little step from the Frog, does deny any trade from the Outland Ranger on this turn, unless there is a movement trick coming out, but just really awkward positions for Kumbelkefer now, just not able to put any creatures down in any safe spot.
So many Toads, he says, screw the Toads, I'm going to go harvest, get out of here, I'm a 6/4 now, deal with this Windstorm Colossus, I'm leaving. That was his line of dialogue. Frogify, however, deals, oh my goodness, he's going to just assimilate this Windstorm Colossus into the Frog Collective as if they were Borg frogs, and then we're just going to see Frog versus Frog slaughter. It's going to be terrible. At least that's what I predict might happen. Keep in mind, one of these Frogifies is from Spellworld, so technically Shadow Blue will have 4 Frogifies to work with throughout this deck, assuming he runs 3.
Yeah, that's really important as you get into the later and later stages of the game. Usually in these type of matchups, your Last Nightmares, your Frogifies, your hard removal cards want to be saved for the Colossus. So if you have to use one onto another creature, something like Kaleem, something like even this 6/4 Outland Ranger, if you think it poses enough of a threat that it needs to be dealt with, using those really denies the value that you can get in the late game and frees up those Colossus to be more powerhouses. Now generating an extra Frogify, you have that freedom to really use one whenever you see fit. So really nice from Shadow Blue that he was able to get an extra one of those.
The Frogs using their peer pressure to convince that Colossus to become one of them, and then destroying it. Tragic tale. And the Shadow Blue's board position is just so good right now. So much harvesting going on. Soul Drain here, very useful against one of these Frogs. Once again, it's not the best card to deal with Battletoads, but, it loses just a little bit of value if you consider 2 Soul Drains clear of Battletoads, you lose 1 card. So not bad here, and more importantly, it's unfortunately it just doesn't stop any harvesting. It does stop damage to the face if an Aurora were to come out or something like that, but the Frogs are still able to double harvest this turn, which is what you're generally trying to avoid when you're harvesting yourself. You want to gain that Faeria advantage. 6 Faeria now for Shadow Blue. Aurora's trick has no target.
I think the big thing with the Soul Drain pickup there as well is it actually allowed Kumpelkeffer to get this Shaitan Demon down. If he hadn't picked that up and been able to remove one of these Battletoads, playing the Demon, it just immediately gets cleared, and then you don't set up any collection of your own. Whereas in this situation, having that come down in a safer position where it's not immediately going to get cleared looks actually really strong of a position for Kumpelkeffer to have at least one of these creatures survive, start to have that collection going.
Yeah, at this point, that Demon changes things quite a bit now. You don't want to Frogify that Demon by all means. That's the last thing you'd like to do. It's an option to do it. It does stop harvesting, which is important. But that's the only option he has of clearing that Demon now because of what you're saying. In the meantime, you've got this double harvesting Outland Ranger to deal with. So do you want to Frogify that? There's a lot of different options here. He has not used his power. Oh, I think he started making basic land. Okay, he just did. So that takes care of that option. Ooh, timer down to 13 seconds. What's he going to do here?
I would expect we see the Frogify onto the Outland Ranger so that the Toads clear that. Even jumping up to collect with the Toad on the left as well, and then you can play... Oh, I'm actually surprised by the Warrior instead of just playing more Battletoads here, because that's going to allow the Demon to get a free clear onto either the Warrior or get extra value from just the single Battletoad.
Almost out of time there on that turn. That would have been devastating if he had not been able to do one of those actions. That Frog could have been saved if it was not destroyed. Luckily, it was for Kumpelkeffer. Now with the larger Frog to deal with. Goes for the baby first, and we'll deal with him later. Other than this, there's just a Fanatic he can put down if it would allow his Demon to go in double harvesting position or closer to, the enemy orb.
And the Fanatic could be played and just jump itself down one space onto the lake by your opponent's well. And that actually sets up what you're hoping is the Demon to clear off the Triton Warrior, and then now your Fanatic is either in a position to collect or push an aggressive Desert so that you can get a really good position for your eventual Colossus when you're able to play it down. But another great spell whirl from Shadow Blue, giving him the Triton Chef is a useful card in this type of situation, and the Ninja Toad as well could just clear off the Demon and keep his Triton Warrior safer here to continue to push damage.
That's going to leave a 4/4 in the face, which is a threat. That is a clock on the board, at least, 4 turns maximum. And Aurora, that changes things. So, yeah, this is now something, Kumpelkeffer has to figure out how to deal with. Does he want to use a Last Nightmare to clear off this 4/4? That is a consideration he honestly might have to make. We'll have to see what he draws. Oh my
Just
goodness.
going to continue to put the pressure on, whether that Chef stays in the collection spot or he creates another land for it to start hitting the orb as well. The Triton Banquet, continues to represent damage, so we are really in the race of it now.
He can clear the Warrior with Flashwind and the Campfire from the Outland Ranger. That is an option. It loses his Fanatic, but it does leave him with a 3/2 on board. The only other option, is Last Nightmaring, and it leaves you with a 3/2 on board. So, do you spend one card or two cards? And which card do you want to keep for the future? I would imagine that you want to keep the Last Nightmare, so yeah. Okay. So the same thing I was talking about, except you clear off the Triton Chef. That way, your unit remains to clear off the Triton Warrior in the following turn, assuming there's no 1 damage ping.
Yeah, just kind of going for the greedy play here of having your Fanatic survive instead of killing off the Warrior, you kill off the Chef instead. So it is a really nice position because that Warrior is in a spot where it's not collecting. You're giving your opponent another turn of damage and saying, okay, I'm going to recover from this spot. I just need the extra turn or two of greedy value.
Yeah, and Aurora is here, ready to do things. Puts the 4/4 out of range of that 4/1. Ruins Shadow Blue's day a little bit. Or I'm sorry, Kumpelkeffer's day. That Aurora can be put in a double harvesting position. I'm not sure if he just said that. I missed if he said that or not. Disciple looks like it's not going to get any play this game. That's one thing I think we can say for sure, at least not in the near future. He had the opportunity to play a few buffs on it, but chose not to. What do you think here? Do you just Aurora and hit face? See, that's my native instinct is just go for face as much as possible. But the option here is, use Aurora, but then clear the 4/1, stop that harvesting. And as we know, it's pretty powerful.
I think you have to go for the clear, possibly. Just jump back across Aurora, your Triton Warrior, up to a 6/6. Also possible, just clear this and then play Battletoads. The Campfire has already been played from the Outland Ranger, so it can't really gain any extra value here. One of the Toads will be able to clear that off. But it's really just playing for the late game. If you think you can continue to control the board and deny whatever your opponent's able to do, and then you're playing towards your Colossus, whatever your late game condition is, if it's maybe Dream Reaver, if it is even just getting one Beru down, getting towards whatever your late game win condition of the deck naturally is, I think is just better in this situation.
And speaking of, there's the Colossus off the top. He has the option to clear the Frog. He can't place any lands now because he used the draw card. So he can just place a Colossus next to his opponent's face, hope to dodge a Frogify, which, as we know, he actually will dodge unless there's one taken from the top there. So seems to be a good option. It also, by killing the bottom Frog, stops Shadow Blue from double harvesting because this Frog is out of position for such a thing. Face is an option, though, with Aurora. There's the Colossus. Kumpelkeffer draws a Triton Warrior.
Enough Faeria right now for Shadow Blue. He could go for the draw and see if he draws into the Frogify. Looks like he's going to go Aurora and then maybe go for +1 Faeria, so you give yourself more options for next turn. But right now there is lethal setup here. Currently 7 damage for Shadow Blue and that Triton Banquet in hand.
Yes, Aurora could get the kill shot, but no longer because Last Nightmare deals with the 6/6 Frog. Wow, he didn't make a land because he had to gain Faeria to play the Last Nightmare, so not able to do damage with that Windstorm Colossus. He's at 8 health, so close yet so far from hitting Krog. Look at Krog smiling, just taunting him. He's so happy of what just happened. He's not happy, but could have been much worse. There's a 4-cost Colossus. You got 5, I got 4.
Yeah, and we should see that come down. I'm actually surprised Shadow Blue didn't just +1 Faeria, play the Triton Banquet on Aurora and start just pushing even 2 damage extra and get that just 1 hit from the Colossus. Or if the Colossus doesn't survive, then you're able to have that Aurora continue to push. Even just 2 damage at a time is enough to represent killing your opponent at some stage of the game here. But Kaleem's trading picked up. It's going to have to be Colossus trading into each other. Otherwise, Kumpelkeffer is just going to lose the game to the board state.
Colossus, just mighty Colossus, just flying across the board and smashing into each other. Must look pretty impressive to Aurora, who just is standing there while it happens. Saves himself from lethal. Yeah, like you said, only thing you can do. Now, here it comes. Here it comes, Scorch. The Windsword Charger comes down. Oh my goodness, I think we're going to see a sweep. Oh, he says well played. No, don't. It's not well played yet. Because you're about to get... Oh, that hurts. That
Beautiful.
Hurts. That
Beautiful
hurts.
swing of the board here, getting that charger converted over. Not only just in terms of stealing the creature, but denying your opponent that collection. The board state here is so much better for Shadow Blue coming out. Another Colossus picked up is still really good for Kumpelkeffer.
And there it is, Shadow Blue taking the win there, which means that we're going to go on to a game 5 in this
I'm
best
actually
of 5.
very surprised in that situation that Kumpelkeffer surrendered. Did have the ability to play another Colossus. Maybe he just thinks his opponent's going to have enough with that charger on board to kill him over the course of even 2 turns before he's able to get the Colossus to really deal the killing blow there. But really nicely played by both players, just continuing to trade back and forth. And then Shadow Blue, just because of the extra cards generated by Spell Whirl, really is able to continue to keep up the board pressure and eventually take the game.
Possibly tilted after that. That Aurora's trick. Perhaps just wanted to get it over with. And we will see Crackthorn from Kumpelkeffer, which means these players did not bring the same set of decks. Crackthorn would be for Kumpelkeffer, where just straight up red would be for Shadow Blue. So, Crackthorn versus Blue. Here we go. Shadow Blue has turn 1.
Yeah, just going for that start. Oh, gets the Water Elemental is a really nice pickup here. Could go for the Triton Warrior if he wants as well, but I think you generally go for the Prairie Water Elemental, get that good lake spot right onto your well, and then the second Prairie straight up. But having seen the red start, maybe we see Warrior not going to play it in the more aggressive spot to get in on the aggressive plays.
Now this is unexpected. Going straight forward with Blue. This may be from experience dealing with Crackthorn, or he doesn't know this Crackthorn. It could just be red. Sunken Tower, interesting tool as well for this deck. Gabriel Enchantress unfortunately doesn't have a lot of offensive targets to use in this blue deck, but perhaps we'll have an opportunity to do something to one of Kumpelkeffer's damaged units.
I think just because Kumpelkeffer went for the mountain straight in front of the orb, maybe you're thinking just in that position I can get a good trade into something very early, but Cypher coming down and the perfect response already in hand by Shadow Blue, and picks up another one just in case with the Frogify there.
If there was no Frogify, which he happens to have 2 of, if there was no Frogify, this would be a really troubling position for Shadow Blue, but Frogify makes it simple. The board position here is not what I would expect for blue versus green-red. They're both going for each other. There's a line of lands. No one is even bothering to harvest yet. Of course, that'll change in the upcoming turns. But this opening skirmish, wait a minute. Okay, letting Cypher live for a turn, I believe is what's happening. Or Sunken Towering him away. Is he taking him for a ride?
I would expect that that's what you end up having to go for, just because you've now played it so greedy. If your opponent is just mono red and they have Silent Horsemaster coming out, you're in a position where Cypher can just move back across if you don't move him away with the Sunken Tower there. So
surfing away is Cypher. He did not expect that, but now he's able to harvest. Yeah, wow. You had the opportunity to use that perfect Frogify. Of course, afterwards your Triton Warrior would be at 2 health, which means Cypher's Wrath and all that stuff. But yeah, it completely changed the direction of this game with that Sunken Tower and with that play. It's going to play out completely differently. And if we had lived in the universe where the Frogify had happened, that would be a completely different game, obviously. But on a significant scale is what I really mean. It's now we're going to see double harvesting, mid-range play from both players. That opening is I don't think I've ever seen an opening like that in this matchup.
It was very strange from both players, and now they've kind of reset to more what we would expect. There is, now with that Prophet of Tides picked up, a couple interesting lines from Shadow Blue where he could do some movement in very interesting ways, getting the Triton Warrior off to the far right and Frogify and kill Cypher, and have the Prophet set up on the left. But looks like he's going to go continue to be more of the greedy plays here and get that Warrior just double collecting off the left side here, and just wait for that Frogify until he's actually forced to use it.
Yes, and first offensive harvest of the game with this Triton Warrior. Sunken Tower, worth its weight in gold right now off of that Spell Whirl. Basically already paid for itself with moving 2 lands. You consider it to be 2 shifting tides if you want to look at it like that. Grove Collar. No,
Not quite
yeah.
good enough here. Shadow Blue played really nicely around it with his land development. If Cypher wasn't currently on the forest, then Kumpelkeffer could forest in between the 2 players' prairies, and then Grove Color across, but Cypher currently needs to step to move off of that forest, and that means the teleport leaves him kind of in no man's land instead of able to step over and kill the Triton Warrior. So a little bit of an awkward position here, but probably just continue to see the land development, maybe see the Ground Shaker and deny that last tick from the Sunken Tower.
Yeah, it recognizes the threat of that tower, and now Cypher is in that position that you're talking about, where he has the opportunity to kill a juicy train where I guess he just eats it whole, swallows it whole, and just becomes extremely buff. Of course, blue is the deck you want to run against Cypher when you encounter him because you have all those Frogifies, although Shadow Blue seems reluctant to do so. Maybe Cypher will live all game as a gigantic beast just surfing around the board. Prophet of Tides here.
Interesting to see that Ancient Herald now picked up. That just naturally came off the draw. Wasn't from a spell whirl here from Shadow Blue. So definitely, makes me think that this is more of a mid-range deck from the blue that we've been used to seeing of just the straight blue jump.
Yeah, Ancient Herald. Yeah, definitely the first time I've seen that in this tournament. Not that I've seen every game, but not a standard include for blue. Super powerful card, though. And right next to Face, my goodness. Okay, yeah, here comes the Frogeye. Finally, Cypher loses that opportunity to gain tons of health. Triton Warrior will survive, but of course at 1 health, it's vulnerable to all sorts of red tricks that Kumpelkeffer does not have in hand. It's not possible to play Garadan this turn either. Man, tough spot for Kumpel. Well, not really tough, but it could be much better if he had the right card. Of course, Ground Shaker would be the nuts here.
Yeah, this would be a really good position if Kumpelkeffer had even just another Ground Shaker. I think that's why Shadow Blue played it out this way, is he's left his creatures in positions where, we've already seen that Ground Shaker. I'm going to bank on my opponent doesn't have another Ground Shaker in hand. So not even really anything good with the Grove Color to be done here.
Yeah, it's just too tricky to work out well. That 5/6 is an important stat line from the Ancient Herald and also for the Ground Shaker, but there's a lot of things that can't kill a 5/6. In fact, most things in game can't kill a 5/6, I'd say. So huge board presence just by placing it down. And don't forget, it represents hidden tempo. Inside that Ancient Herald is a value of 2 Faeria somewhere, in theory, if you were able to draw something with 5 health. Which, in his deck, what else could it be? Another Herald? Looks like he's going to do the Grove Collar. Oh, with Embrace. Okay.
Well, we did see the Mirror Phantasm as well in that last game, so maybe that's what Shadow Blue is aiming to get, or something like the Wave Crash Colossus that we now see.
Yeah, and the Embrace would generally be a great play. Frogify does exist. Unfortunately, if he wants to play it, he could Harvest, make a land, and then clear that Ground Shaker out. That leaves him in a very tenuous position with just a 3/1 on board. So actually, that Grove Collar at Elderwood Embrace is a very strong play, considering with what Shadow Blue has in hand. Is it just use the Colossus to clear the Ground Shaker, like I think you were saying, and then maybe take care of the Grove Collar for harvesting? Either way, after this turn, Shadow Blue is not going to be left in a super desirable position.
Yeah, this has kind of become very awkward in the way that Shadow Blue has played his lands out. The way that the movement ended up with the Prophet of Tides directly in the middle of the board, really a no man's land, not collecting, not in any trade position, and then now you've got the Triton Warrior. Oh, and now played a land, so couldn't even double prairie up to the top right and clear off the Grove Collar and collect at the same time. So yeah, just kind of really awkward lands coming out from Shadow Blue here.
Look at how long he's taking to do this turn because it is such a tough turn. There's no great, amazing thing he can do. Going for the Harvest, going for the Frogeye, which was the first play we talked about, which does leave him with the 3/1, which is vulnerable to so many things, including the Crackthorn itself, which we haven't seen. There's an option to feed the forest here, or even to just Grove Collar the Grove Collar over. How'd you like Grove Collars? You get to Harvest that way as well, and take board control. That's not a bad play.
Yeah, that looks really strong. There's 2 really good lines here. You can get the Mountain down for the Axe Grinder, and that looks like that's what he's going for. There was also Forest off on the far side, so that you could Grove Collar your Grove Collar in the top right down into the bottom left, collect and clear off the Prophet of Tides. Looks like we should see the Colossus come out from Shadow Blue here, just because it represents way more damage than Kumpelkeffer currently has on board, and then we'll have to see what the response is.
Yeah, he purposely saved that Grove Collar, perhaps to allow this turn for that Axe Grinder. Ooh, no, actually, yeah, because he has to make the Forest there, so that Axe Grinder cannot attack face with the Grove Collar. Oh, no, it can. You just move forward, and then you make the Forest next to your... Okay, so that's possible. But yeah, there's a 7/7 staring you in the face. I wonder if it's not time to use Feed the Forest to get rid of his current Grove Collar and just cycle for something, search for something to deal with that 7/7. You do have the Garadan that will be playable afterwards, and then hopefully trade with the Colossus. So tough.
Yeah, it's very difficult in this situation. It's tough to look at it right now because you really want to draw and try to find maybe another buff so that you can Grove Collar your Axe Grinder back and clear off the Colossus here. You also need another Forest in order to play Feed the Forest, which is really difficult decision on whether you want to draw or create that land. I think you could possibly Axe Grinder up onto your opponent's prairie and then create that forest like you were talking about, so you can Grove Collar the Axe Grinder to hit the orb this turn, and then you could actually Feed the Forest the new Grove Collar and see what you draw off of that play. Maybe even go for the Ground Shaker follow-up, but looks like he's going to go for the Ground Shaker first. I have to see if he feeds the Ground Shaker here, but
looks like, yeah, just the Ground Shaker. I think his line of thinking is, okay, let the Ground Shaker hit the Colossus and then clean up with a Garadan. I think maybe his line of thinking, if I were to speculate at all, he'd also use to Feed the Forest. I think the math works out because he goes to 5, potentially harvest twice, 7. Yeah, so that's a potential line of play. And ideally, Shadow Blue would drop a bunch of 3 health creatures to make that Garadan ever so juicy. I really like that last turn. Like that turn, you could analyze, I think, for a long time because there are so many different potential lines of play at this point in the game. This matchup is like super cerebral, blue versus Crackthorn. There's a lot of different things that take a lot of experience to determine what exactly the absolute best line of play is. And sometimes there is no absolute best line of play. Sometimes you have to predict what your opponent might have in hand or use your knowledge of what they've played before to what the best move might be. So we've ended up with a Ground Shaker versus a Colossus.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point there of, not only playing for the most value that you can on this turn, sometimes it's, okay, what do I need to give up this turn to gain over the next turn or 2 turns or 3 turns, planning so far into the future. Even in that position where Kumpelkeffer played the Ground Shaker, you've set up, I have defensive options and I have the Grove Collar in hand, so I could set up aggressive options as well. So now it's just a really awkward position again for Kumpelkeffer where maybe you need to Grove Collar and then Feed the Forest to play Garrett in here. Just not quite sure what the best way to do it is.
I was seeing if there was a way to both Elderwood Embrace and Grove Collar the Axe Grinder over. Oh, hey, it just happened, because now you end up with a 7/1. And that's a well played from Krog. And Krog is so polite. And 7/1 on board against blue is going to be very strong. Likely the only removal that Shadow Blue would have would be an Emperor's Command, and that's 2 Faeria, so not too bad of a trade. Kumpelkeffer, though, down to 0 Faeria. These players are 2-2. The winner of this moves on to the Grand Finals. Losers not out of this. You move on to the 3rd place match, and you are guaranteed at least $100 at this point for 4th place if you do happen to lose this and then lose the 3rd place match. So at this point, everyone is a winner that we're watching. There are no bounties in this match, bounty holders in this match. There comes Triton Warrior, and at this point, Kumpelkeffer has such a commanding lead on the board, he just wants to maintain it. He doesn't want to throw it at this point. Keep the board clear and put down as much beef as possible and just hit Krog in the face until down to 0.
Yeah, we'll need to find a bigger creature here. Even just a Crackthorn would be really good to kind of seal the game. Cypher's Wrath is a great pickup to deal with the Warrior here. And then your Axe Grinder sitting defensively is really good for possibly just whenever the Colossus ends up coming out from Shadow Blue. He's going to have to play the smaller creatures before he can ever get that next Colossus down. But Kumpelkeffer in really good collecting positions, now collecting from 3 wells and at least 2 of those are really guaranteed over the next couple of turns. And there's the Ground Shaker. There's that next big creature that Kumpel Kefir needs to get down. Could even go for the Garroden if he wants.
And this 7/1 Axe Grinder is super relevant because that means that Shadow Blue can't just drop Colossi next to face and hope it works out. Well played. Such a polite Krog. And Garrodan wreaks havoc. I think this is a real well played this time because that shuts down Shadow Blue very hard. Beru is 8 Faeria. He's a great card to have against Crackthorn, by the way. But unfortunately, too late in the game. At this point, there's 8 damage staring him in the face. The only playable cards he has, would be like a Water Element with Seek. And, oh, you know what? That Enchantress could see some work here. Take that Axe Grinder to 1/1. Open up a Colossus play for later, which he does not have in hand. Mystic Beast. Okay, so I think the 5th well played is the real well played, and there we go. Well done
there
to
it
Kumpel
is.
Kefir.
Kumpel Kefir
3-2.
going to advance to the grand final. Shadow Blue, like you were mentioning, not out yet. Is going to be able to play in that 3rd place match coming up here, but just a great series by both players. Great back and forth. Again, kind of like we've been seeing throughout the course of the day in these 3-2s. It's really been players, trading blows back and forth, taking the games from each other in the responses after they've lost.
Yeah, no shame in losing there. 3-2. You couldn't really ask for much more. We saw the most we could from these high-level players. We're going to move on next to the 3rd place match, which Shadow Blue will be moving on to. And, and we'll watch Kumpel Kefir a little bit later. And I think at this point, we're ready to go back to the desk with Aquablad. Take it away.
All right, guys. What an intense game between 2 new players on the competitive Faeria scene. It could have really went any way apart from at the end there where the Crackthorn kind of took control. But overall, very impressive. What do you think of that series overall, Lizard?
Yeah, my favorite was the Yellow Temple Mirror, where Kumpel Kefir showed a great display of just maneuvering his creatures in the right place, and especially getting that early board clear with the Flashwind and the Fanatic to set up Khalim next to his face and an aggressive charger as well. This was really great. It's a battle of the underdogs, I'd say. Both players are not very known in the Faeria community, but they've proven that they have what it takes to play in the monthly, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they'll do.
Some impressive play overall, but I did feel the blue jump versus yellow events match was very strange because I felt like Shadow Blue was winning, and then he kind of made some greedy, aggressive plays, especially with that Triton Warrior, and then just gave the opportunity for Kumpel to get some value clears. And I think that could have been avoided if the Battletoads were used a little earlier. The last set of Battletoads, excuse me. But overall, I feel that both these players have shown that even though they are unknown to us in the competitive scene, they have great game sense. They played an intense 3-2 series, so very evenly matched. And I look forward to seeing them both in the next coming games.
Yeah, absolutely. That last game, though, was kind of weird. At the start, we saw Rush opening from Kumpel Kefir, and then we saw the counter Sunken Tower to push away that Cypher, deny that aggression. And yeah, the game took another turn, and we saw both players play the long game, but in the end it was Kumpel Kefir who took the win.
See, my theory is that it's Rod of Incense that Moradrin Monk has on his stick in the artwork. They had a whiff of that, and they thought they were playing Yellow Rush, both of them. And then after the first 2 turns, they both looked at their decks and they were like, wait, I'm not playing Yellow Rush. Let's play this game normally. So, yeah, it was strange. They both decided to play the Rush game plan starting off. And then all of a sudden, they were just, both of them were like, well, wait a minute, we're not playing this right. Let's play this a bit more traditionally. Do you feel those Rush openers from both players had influence on how that game went?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like... as you said in the one game where I think Shadow Blue was ahead with his blue jump list, where he chose to play the Triton Warrior aggressive instead of playing it in the double collect or dropping the Battletoads, just to establish more dominance on the board. I think that was a mistake. And going face that early, I think cost him the game, really.
You know, both players making interesting lines, but, you know, we're used to specific players playing in the monthly cup getting into the top four. So we get used to how those players play. But then when new players come into the scene, you kind of sometimes witness different thought patterns, different ways that they want to approach the match, approach the game. And yeah, overall, sometimes you can agree with it, sometimes you can disagree with it. The aggro openings were very strange, but, you know, maybe Shadow Blue thought, you know what, if he's playing red, I might have to be aggressive here. And then he wasn't playing red, he was playing Crackthorn. And then both players went, okay, let's reset it to neutral. I don't need to play aggressive. The most interesting part for me of that last series, of the opener, is that Kumpel decided to go rush as well. Like, why did he decide to go rush? I would have just let him come to me, to be honest. What do you think? Do you think going rush was the right line for Kumpel?
I don't know. I mean, usually with Crackthorn, you play very defensive, go to both sides, collect, and try to outvalue your opponent by clearing the board with AoE, and we saw a Gurdon from him. So there's definitely, there are definitely AoE cards in the deck. But he chose to go for an aggressive push with the Cypher. I'm not sure he had the Sagami in hand for mobility. Maybe he just wanted to get some early pressure down, force your opponent to play defensive and not get those leg spots that Blue John loves to take.
It maybe felt he could punish him for the aggressive play, you know, slap that Cypher down and say, well, I can get to your Frog unless you really retreat back into the inner well, which we did see from Shadow in that match. He went, instead of going like the straight line that we're used to, the diagonal lines, he had to go inner well, which kind of set him back a bit. So I think, yeah, maybe just a bit of a ballsy play from Shadow Blue there at the start, and then you had the counterplay just like, well, deal with Cypher. If you can't deal with it, it's going to cause you a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But we'll take
one thing I want to touch on was the great play against Kumpel where Shadow Blue took the charger with the trick. That's something you don't see much often, but it's so fulfilling, and it's one of those big plays which at which that should go wild. I love those moments.
I actually felt for him, man. I was so when I saw that charger came down, I think a little tear came from my eye, because that trick was just so sad, because he fought so hard to stay in that match up until that point, and then the trick comes down. It's just like, well, whatever. You know, what can I do here?
Well, up until then, it was basically back and forth of both players, but then that one trick came down, and it was basically game.
The ultimate sadness. Well, we'll take a look at the brackets before we go to the break. Mayhem, once again, making his way into a Faeria Monthly Cup final. And he is going to go up against newcomer Kumpel. So old school versus new school once again in our finals, where our third place match will be Arianel, another Monthly Cup champion, going up against another newcomer, Shadow Blue. So Team Faeria Tail once again taking 2 top 4 spots in a Monthly Cup. It's probably safe to say at this point, especially in competitive play, that Team Faeria Tail have the strongest lineup, just because they always have at least 2 guys in top 4.
I mean, they're a fairly large team. That's something you have to add. And they don't have problems of communication since they're all French. I feel like sometimes there's the language barrier that exists. I mean, in our team, it's not that prevalent since we all speak English pretty well, but I don't know. I think it might hinder some of the players from North Korea or South Korea or China, some of the Asian guys who just don't speak English.
Yeah, I mean, Faeria's still a young game in that region, so perhaps over time we'll see some strong teams come in from the Southeast region, and
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, countries from around there. So we're going to go to a break while we set up the next game. Don't go anywhere. We have the third place match where players will be playing for $500. But don't worry, one player will walk away with $100. So there is still money for the top 4 players. So until then, stay tuned. We'll be back very soon.